All right. Hey, Mary.
Hey Ted,
How's it going?
good to see you.
Good to see you too. I thought I would just introduce this video series to our viewers before we start chatting. So I'm Ted Gordon. I'm a musicologist, and I write for Project Schott NY. I've been writing for them, working for them for about 10 years now. And in this video series, we're talking with our composers about what their life has been like, what their work has been like in the past year, how things have changed, how things haven't changed, and just to kind of have a catch up and see how musicians are working through this really, really challenging time that we've all been going through. So yeah, I guess I'll start off by just asking, how has the past year changed what you do, or has it changed what you do as a composer? What have the effects been on you?
Yeah, I mean it's been a bonkers year. I think everything has changed. Like my relationship to music making has changed a lot. The way that I actually create music has really changed. Prior to the pandemic, I had gotten really excited because a lot of my work became really collaborative with artists in different disciplines, with choreographers and visual artists. And that was sort of a new thing for me to start to work with so many different kinds of people in the pre-production phase and the production phase of music making. And then that all got removed, and I really found myself exploring similar things that I had done when I was a teenager and didn't know anybody, didn't know other artists, didn't know other musicians, which meant that a lot of the music that I was making was for the electronic medium and things that I could record at home and sort of create at home. And it ended up being a really a dorky blessing, but a really happy blessing, because I have in my back closet a lot of instruments that I've had with me since high school, like a clarinet, a saxophone, guitars, accordion, flute, all sorts of things. And
Neighbors love you now.
what was it?
I'm sure your neighbors love you now.
Oh yeah, and I moved into this apartment also at the start of the pandemic, so they only know me as the crazy lady who plays all these weird instruments. But it just invited an opportunity to bring those instruments out and to start recording them and sampling them, and to create music that was only dependent on myself, which was really fun.
Mm.
It also meant that because a lot of commissions had either been canceled or pushed back a season or even 3 seasons now, that my composition calendar really got skewed. So I put a lot more focus on teaching this year, which has
Mm.
been really great. Teaching at Columbia and the new school in Brooklyn College this year.
Mhm. Yeah, so working on projects that got postponed or kind of pushed back or changed, were there any projects that kind of changed their parameters or their contours to kind of match what has been happening, or have they all just kind of been pushed back until further notice?
Oh, I guess a little of both. I had done a project called They Will Take My Island, which was a piece that the Metropolitan Museum had commissioned that was a collaboration with filmmaker Adam Egoyan. And it's a string octet and film and electronics, and it was supposed to be premiered at the end of March at the museum and live and in person, but of course got canceled. So that project, even though it had been finished, got adapted into a virtual medium, and more so than here are just all the performers on stage and we're showing this on a virtual concert. The actual film ended up being presented as a film that you watch rather than a video installation on stage. And the piece really became more of a fixed recording than a live performance. So that is probably the only project that really changed. The others have just been pushed back,
Mhm.
which has actually meant for a project like my opera Adoration, I had written a good chunk of it. And in this time with a lot of reflection about our world and really a lot of the darkness that has come out of it in this past year and a half, both not just in terms of the pandemic, but also socially, I felt like the music was too polite. And I completely trashed everything that I did, which I've never done. I've never gotten rid of music, like ever. But I trashed all of it and I started over. And I think it's a lot more confrontational in a constructive way. So I think this time has allowed some revisiting and thinking, what is it that you're trying to communicate and how are you choosing to do it? And
Yeah.
also, are you scared to communicate in a certain way? And if so, just whatever, just do it anyway. So yeah.
Yeah. Wow. So did the other collaborators on Adoration, how did they feel about your
Super
getting rid of
excited. Super
other? Okay.
excited. Yeah, and it was a good time too because we were supposed to be workshopping a lot this
Uh-huh.
year, and all of the workshops also got pushed back. So no one was put in an awkward position or anything with the reworking of material.
Yeah, that's cool. So you're workshopping another piece right now too, right? At MPAC. Can you tell me a bit about
Yes.
that piece?
Yeah. So this is a piece called Paper Pianos, and it's a collaboration with Alarmal Sound, with visual artist Kevwork Murad, who does these amazing sort of projection art installations for
Mhm.
live performance, and director Nigel Meister. And it's a project I've been working on since 2016. It's an evening length, yeah, a long time. Well, it was a short, itty bitty little 10-minute piece back in 2016. And the collaboration with Alarmal Sound just went so well that we decided, okay, we're going to make this a big evening length project. And it's a documentary. And I say documentaries, and it's a live documentary. It's one of my weird musical hybrid documentaries
Mhm.
about the refugee crisis. And I interviewed 4 refugees, 3 of which are also resettlement workers, about their experience coming to New York and what that process entails and what life is like now that they're here. And yeah, a little less than this next year, we're workshopping through MPAC with hopes to premiere next spring.
Wow. So those are happening in person.
Those are happening in person. Yeah.
I guess
Paper
MPAC is a large space, right? So you could do it with indoor distancing and yeah.
Yeah, it's a pretty large space. The performers can be quite spatialized. And yeah, I think with limited capacity, and we'll see what things look like in the spring as far as maybe fuller capacity or not.
Uh-huh. So would you say that's maybe one of the things you're kind of looking forward to as we transition? I mean, I actually hate to say this, maybe I should knock on wood or something, but if things keep changing at the rate at which they are changing, and hopefully more people get vaccinated and physical proximity becomes something that is permissible or advisable in terms of health again, what are you kind of looking forward to returning to? Maybe like in the next like concert season of fall, 2021.
Yeah, so much. Um, if I'm wearing my composer hat,
Mhm.
I I miss audiences. I just do. So much of my work is political and social by nature, and the idea is that you have an audience and then you're talking about the things that were explored after, which can be controversial things which need discussion. They need words to process a lot of these things, especially when the topics are refugees, displacement, war, genocide. I feel like it's so weird to experience something like that and then just turn your browser off. Um, but I guess just as much as that is just being in the room with other musicians and collaborating and making changes and getting to know performers. Like, oh, that's your sound. Okay, in that case, if you're interested in doing this and this, let's try this.
Mhm.
And I just miss the living and breathing component of music making. Uh, as an audience member living in New York, I'm so excited for all the live concerts that are happening outside this summer. Like, I
Mhm.
just can't wait to see things and get excited by music.
Yeah, yeah. Have you been doing any outdoor activities, like in terms of musical activities this past year?
Oh, is like as with my own music, I think it's only happened once or twice.
Mhm.
Alarm Will Sound and I workshopped outside over at PS21 in Chatham, but it was
Oh,
in the middle of a huge tornado warning, so it was really difficult. Like, parts of the stage were falling. We had to go down into like a bunker or something for a little while, and it was really intense. They were all great sports. I'm looking forward to an easier outdoor situation. Um, San
wow.
Francisco Symphony had done a few one-on-one outdoor performances where one of their performers would play something and there would be one audience member invited. And Helen,
Just people.
what was it?
Just two people.
Just two people. Yeah, yeah. And I'd written something for Helen Kim, violinist in the San Francisco Symphony, and she had done those outdoor things as well. But other than that, I think outdoor activity has just been long walks through Brooklyn and stumbling upon people playing outside and just soaking it in as much
Mhm.
as possible.
Yeah, that's really nice. I was gonna ask, I mean, there have been some, I hate to even say this, but like there have been some developments over the past year that may be a kind of net positive. Like maybe the fact that we couldn't be indoors all the time, at least last summer, forced people to, do things in a public space in a way that they wouldn't have done before, or collaboration across long distances may have been made easier by the new normal of remote work. So I was wondering, like, if there's anything that kind of happened in this past year, even though obviously the toll has been uh, tragic and infuriating and traumatic. Like, if there's anything that you think you'll be kind of like taking with you, hopefully as things in terms of public health get better, into the future.
Yeah. Well, you had mentioned, there are all these performances that had been happening outside for the public. And for me, that's the takeaway. I think so often in, I mean, to make a wild generalization, so often in new music, our audience is other new music people or other artists, and just very these supporters of the arts who have lived in this world. And that's exciting, but it's really not as exciting to me anyway as actually just engaging with the, not to get all Mr. Rogers around about it, but with the people in your neighborhood. Like, really just people outside. Everybody loves music and art and wants to engage with it, and we tend to keep it in this very special place. So for instance, something that was really exciting in the past few months was the Kaufman Music Center had been doing their musical storefront series, where they took a closed storefront and they just curated like 3 concerts a day of performers playing in the storefront and amplified it into the Lincoln Center area. And
Mhm.
you just see people walking by and they were so hungry for music and they loved it. And I loved seeing people react so positively to that. And I hope that, coming out of a time when ticket prices are so expensive, like it's so expensive to go to the opera. Like, why is it like $200 to get a ticket to go to the opera? To come out of that and then to have so many free events, I hope that we can think about accessibility just much
Yeah,
more
I mean,
deeply.
we can only hope that, I guess, like funders and people who make budgets will take that into consideration, right? And like to rework how budgets are made and how things are projected in terms of projected revenues and funding sources. But I was curious about this because it struck me, or it strikes me often, that a lot of your work is, well, I mean, to be frank, it's very it's it's serious and solemn and very gripping and powerful and moving. And it strikes me that an audience member ought to be kind of glued into a seat, to have to watch and listen to your work. So I guess I'm just curious. I mean, if you see yourself like, or if what a kind of a public performance of your work might mean to you.
Yeah.
I realize that's maybe not something you might not have, or I don't know, that's like that's not possible, or with the kinds of work that you've been working on. But just would be interested to hear your thoughts about that.
Sure. I'm not sure I have a specific answer other than I think the key area is really accessibility.
Yeah.
Is it if the project is intended to be in a traditional concert hall, let's say, can people afford to go, or even can it just be free? Or are there events like satellite events that might interest the larger community? And for me, it really is the larger community, because I would love for people who have been displaced or have gone through war, or these conflicts that are being explored, to come to these types of performances. And I think about like my own parents, for instance, who were refugees, who loved music enough to deal with me practicing piano every day, horribly. They were not people who would go to concerts, but they loved music. And I wonder what was being missed there. Like, what did they not feel welcome enough to go into San Diego and go see these performances, which seemed at the time to be the only place where a lot of music was happening when I was growing up. So I'm more interested in that, and I don't really know what the answers are as far as how to make people feel welcome to come into that space, or the reverse, like you're saying, how do you bring music out of that space when it demands focus over long periods of time?
Do you think that live, or what are your thoughts about live streaming? Because that's been, I mean, that has been like the easiest kind of default thing that an organization can do is stick a web camera in your performance hall and have some good microphones and live stream it.
Yeah.
But I'm sure you have thoughts about like the difference between, as you were talking about earlier, like being physically in a room with people, witnessing something together, and being in your home or your office or wherever, and kind of seeing it individually.
Yeah, I mean, I think live streaming's great. It makes me sad when that's the only option, when that's the only possible option. But I would love to see more spaces just have free available live streams. It's good as far as having documentation of the performances. It gets to have a life beyond its one performance. And
Right.
we all know a lot of new music performances only get a premiere, and that's poof, that's it. And to have a wider audience come and feel welcome through a virtual medium, I think is great. And again, it goes back to this idea of my projects dealing with these political and social topics, and that's not meant for a small audience. That is, I want these messages to be heard, because the idea is that hopefully, my ambitious hope is that my projects create a space for people to think and to hopefully foster a culture that is more willing to do direct change in whatever capacity people are able to do. So if there are just 50 people in a concert hall, that's not really as effective as it can be.
Right. Although it is 50 people who, in the moment of that experience, like form a kind of a political body. I'm just thinking of there's a musicologist, Barry Schenk, who has written about the idea that music, listening together, forms a polis, like forms a people. I mean, it's a more complicated argument because it's about aesthetics and the idea of desire and beauty and stuff. But there is something powerful about being together, listening together, attending together, and then, as you were saying, like especially when the work is so powerful and addresses such a difficult topic, to having those interactions after the work is performed to kind of debrief,
Yeah.
in a certain sense.
or even with what you're saying, to have that shared experience of discomfort, because there's a lot of, there are moments of very forward discomfort in my music. And I think that that experience of, I hope that the experience of sitting in the seat in the concert hall and feeling uncomfortable while your neighbor is sitting next to you and feeling uncomfortable does create that sense of bonding that I don't think is quite present on the virtual medium. For instance, there's a piece that I have up through PSNY called Bombs of Beirut, which is a string quartet that was written for Kronos Quartet that has an electronic track with interviews of family and friends who had gone through the Lebanese Civil War. And there's a part where they're talking about the actual bombings that were happening in their civilian neighborhoods. And there's a 4-minute stretch in that piece of field recordings of those bombings that were happening. And in the live experience, the lights go black, like completely black. And the volume is really cranked up to the point where you can feel the floor rumbling, as long as it doesn't actually hurt one's eardrums. And I think that experience of being in the concert hall feels quite scary. You know that you're safe because you're in a concert hall and you know where you are, but it does feel uncomfortable. But if I'm listening to that on my headphones or I'm watching at home on my speakers, I can just lower the volume and I'm not uncomfortable anymore. And then it just becomes kind of background noise. So yeah, some things can be lost, I suppose, on that virtual medium.
Yeah, cool. Well, I look forward to being uncomfortable in
Thank you.
in a powerful and moving way. Yeah, very soon. Well, thanks so much for taking the time out to talk with me. It's a pleasure. Yeah, I really do look forward to everything that you have going on in the fall and next year. Yeah.
Thank you. Such a pleasure.
Yeah, likewise. Okay. Have a great afternoon.
Bye.
Bye.